Hello and welcome to the Patrick Chapman Show. I'm Patrick Chapman and here we go. So first of all, I'm here with Emir again, Emir Phillips, and I think I fixed the microphone. We'll find out at the end, but I got some advice from a student of mine because I know it was way too quiet earlier, and I apologize for that, but I don't really know what I'm doing. So anyway, let's start talking with Emir here. The first topic I got is restaurants. And Emir, you've lived in both New Orleans and Los Angeles, and they're both pretty famous restaurant cities. So which one's better for restaurants?
Well, if you pick top 10, I'm going New Orleans. I mean, obviously I'm biased, but like Galatoire's, Commander's Palace, Brennan's for breakfast, even local restaurants, Lisa's, Mandina's, it's so unique, the food, that New Orleans can be the only city that I've ever eaten in my whole life where I thought beating New Orleans was Lyon, France. I thought their bouchons it was shocking how good the food was. I thought it was better than Paris. So I think, Los Angeles has more, obviously, more depth, more restaurants of high quality, different ethnicities, but unique. I mean, although one thing that comes to mind with Los Angeles, to counter it myself on the is a food truck that was I think the most popular food truck in Los Angeles is a combination of the Mexican burrito with Korean beef. So it's Korean food and Mexican food fusion. And when Los Angeles does stuff like that, it is reminiscent of New Orleans, where they're combining Creole, African American food, French, and it comes out something very unique. So that's something that stuck out in my head about Los Angeles.
Remember that soul food place on Lincoln that was open for a while?
Yes.
That was great.
But you have Creole Connection in New Orleans in the Marigny, which I think is closed, but I'm going to roll it anyway because it was there for years. Creole Connection slaughtered it. Not even close.
Okay, so what would your top 3 restaurants be in New Orleans if you had to choose? If you're going to recommend, somebody's coming into town for a week.
I think the seven on top of my head right away would be,
Yeah.
It depends what they like, but Galatoire's is my favorite. Crab sardine.
Did you know that Suzanne Alciatore's family owned that, I think?
Really?
I think so.
You need to get in touch with her. That would be huge.
I think it was Galatoire's, and I think it was her. Yeah.
And Commander's Palace, and the ambiance is nice. Brennan's for breakfast. I even like Bud's Broilers, the hamburgers. In Los Angeles, they always talk about In-N-Out, which is phenomenal. And that'd be a tight race, Bud's Broiler versus In-N-Out in Los Angeles. But even there, New Orleans can compete because all the food has to be, even fried chicken. You get people like KFC or wherever. Popeyes can compete. So it's, it has a lot of unique flavors.
Now, have all of the big famous places in New Orleans survived Katrina? Because I was there long before Katrina, and then Katrina hit. It must have done a lot of damage. So
I remember the damage because I worked on it for years and with insurance claims for the next 6 years. But I can't remember. A lot of them were temporarily shut down. Some of them were shut down for 2 or 3 years. But a lot. I can't remember one that didn't come back off the top of my head. I'm sure there is, but
how often do you go back to New Orleans?
At least I just went and saw Mark Beebe in February, and I was there for Mardi Gras, or right before Mardi Gras, for a convention. So, every few years.
Okay, so top 3 restaurants in LA.
Oh man, that's hard. I like Lowry's because I like prime rib.
The ones I remember are Quito's Tacos, which I love.
Yeah.
And
that would be low food that's really good.
No, but there's a wide range. You don't have to go like top tier all the time. LA's great for that range where you go really cheap Chinese or cheap Mexican and get some good stuff. So Quito's Tacos in Versailles for Cuban food, And there was a Jewish place.
Langer's is real good. Cantor's.
Yeah, Cantor's.
Cantor's on Fairfax is outstanding. Yes, it's very good. Langer's and Cantor's would be real high for the Jewish food.
Now, sometimes we used to go up to San Francisco and they had this kind of soup. Do you remember what that soup was called?
Chiapino.
Chiapino? Is that what it's
on
called?
Market Street, yeah. The Portuguese sailors would have it. I love Chiapino.
Yeah.
It's whatever they make. It's reminiscent of their gumbo. It's the Portuguese sailors gumbo.
I can never remember the name of it.
Yeah, I never can. You have to wear a bib when you eat it. Sean Bishop. Food would be flying, but it was really good.
Yeah. Now, in New Orleans, when you're eating gumbo, some people like crabs in it. You like crabs in your gumbo? Because I don't.
I love crabs. I've never even said why they have
I like
chicken.
crab meat, but I don't like playing with the crab when it's in my gumbo. You know what I mean? Like trying to fight with it and open
Yes. Yeah, but it's still so good. But you know, when the shell's in there, it gives it a different kind of flavor. So either way, I like both.
So if you got to have a table full of crabs or a table full of crawfish, which would you choose?
Those are top two. I love the shellfish more than even fish. So crawfish then crab, but it's neck and neck.
You know, before I moved to New Orleans, I went down there to visit my dad because he had already moved before we did, and I went down with my mom in March, and my mom took me to the Bonton, and we had I just got a basket of fried oysters, and they were delicious. And then we got this bread pudding with whiskey sauce, and it was delicious.
You know, Sean Bishop cooks an outstanding bread pudding and a whiskey sauce. He's actually quite a good cook.
Yeah.
But every place has their own bread pudding, and Creole Connection was another place that had really good bread pudding. And I'm thinking of K. Paul's used to be really good. I don't know if K. Paul's still around, but it was good. I remember eating rabbit there as a kid. Yeah, all the bread pudding in New Orleans is phenomenal.
It was on that trip too. It was the first time I ever ate crawfish, and it was in a restaurant out on the lake, and it was one of those with the kind of sitting out on the lake, you know. And
so Landry's?
No, it was called Pure Orleans, but the famous one, the more famous one, I think, was Fitzgerald.
Yes,
if I remember
right. It was. Yeah, that was one.
Yeah. So yeah, great times.
I never found the food that good in the lakefront as good as the
Really?
water.
I don't know. You know, everything was new to me at that age and then, but and yeah. Okay. And then there's coffee shops, like besides restaurants. Like we used to hang out at a lot of coffee shops, and I remember it was during college when we would go to PJ's on Maple Street. And that's where, you know, it was great because if I go to a library, I just fall asleep. I mean, it takes 10 minutes and I'm sleeping. It's so quiet and I'm so not interested in what I'm reading anyway. But we could go there and we would read voraciously and then talk enthusiastically. You know, it's just like, we'd go an hour this, an hour that, or whatever. You got the music, the ambiance, a little bit of coffee, etc. And that was great atmosphere in that one, and it was never quite replaced once they closed it. You know, they closed that one on Maple Street. And
there's one on, it's a Britannia magazine.
It's on Magazine, but it's
close.
It's nice.
It's nice.
There are a lot of nice places, but they're nothing quite captured that.
No,
you had the backyard patio, you had the inside, and I remember you used to like leave your computer on a table.
Yes, I was told eventually not to do that.
And
so I was walking around collecting my
neighborhood.
holding down the table. I had to walk because you're sitting for hours. So
Reed got yelled at by a lady for plugging in his computer. This was in the early days of laptops. He was the second person I knew to have a laptop after you, and he plugged it in to load it up, and he got yelled at for stealing their electricity. Yeah. Anyway, it was also there that I remember being there on a Friday night and studying, which is not in my religion. Like I don't often study on a Friday night, but this was college, so I had matured a little bit, and I could read a whole Shakespeare play in one day, which is a lot. It's a lot to read, and I could do it. And I did it more than once, I think, and I would get that rhythm in my head of the rhythm of the iambic pentameter, and I would dream in iambic pentameter. You know, I'd have that rhythm. People in my dreams. And speaking of that, do you dream in Spanish sometimes?
No, I don't even remember my dreams. I don't know why people always seem to, but
You don't remember?
I don't even remember them in English. So.
Okay. Because when I was really intensely learning Polish, I would dream a little bit in Polish, but it didn't last, and it wasn't much. It wasn't long, and now I don't. So I think it's a good test of your language ability.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. You got one for me?
All right. What's something Americans consistently misunderstand about Poland, and what's the truth behind it? So give me a consistent misconception and the truth behind it.
Oh, what do they misunderstand about Poland? Well, probably just that it's, they probably think it's poorer than it is.
Yeah.
Because they remember the old days. They probably think it's colder than it is. It's definitely not that cold, and I think there's a couple of reasons for both. For the belief that it's cold. For one thing, we were looking at the map yesterday. pre-war and post-war. And pre-war, that's a colder area. So the people who went to the States from that area were used to colder times and cold winters. Also, all those immigrants from the late 19th century, early 20th century, they were farmers or peasants go into a big city like Chicago or New York, and they were very poor. And even when they were living here, they were poor. And how well can you heat your house and stay warm when you're poor? So that was their big struggle. So they would probably tell stories about how cold it was, and it probably was. Also, the winters were colder then, So they had to survive some really cold winters. So
and the colder part of Poland, correct me if I'm wrong, the colder part of Poland was ceded to Belarus after World War II by Stalin, and that's where the bulk of the Polish snow in the winter is. I mean, disproportionately.
Yes. Yes, it's much colder up there. Yeah, even nowadays in Poland, the cold cities are Suwałki and Białystok. That's in the northeast corner.
And there's a big difference where we're at right now, southern Poland versus Gdansk. I mean,
right.
I remember we went up there and it was freezing.
Right. We're in southwest Poland. So it's much milder here generally within the... And then you got the mountains. So if you go up in the mountains in the south, that's in the south, that, of course, that's obvious that it snows up there and it gets colder. So yeah. So the weather is one thing. And now we got mild winters too, probably because of global warming. So, and I like that. I'm not complaining.
Minus for you, minus for others, a perk for you.
Right.
Like economically,
yeah.
And I'd ask that. I do think you nailed it on that. People do think Poland's poor. In fact, they don't even think. A lot of Americans, I don't even think they know it's in the EU.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been here. It's my third time. I'm only coming. I guess we average it every 15 years, and every time I come, like this time I came, it's shocking the economic progress.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the one thing I remember, one of the things I remember is during the crisis about 2008 or 2009 when we had that, like the whole world, in America you had the housing crisis and that affected the whole world. And in Europe, there was, Poland was the only country that had economic growth, like it actually went up. Not much, but still, it didn't go down, it went up. So it was still growing, and so that was actually a good time for them. And you can see, I don't know how happy the Polish people are. Like we talked about that a little bit a couple of days ago, but they should be, because when you look at the change that I've seen since I've been here, people are buying cars, they're buying houses. A lot more cars out on the streets than there used to be. They're building houses and buying houses.
A lot more houses here.
For their kids, they got computers and bicycles and everything you could want. And, so that by comparison, they should be pretty happy. And I think the ones that live through that, the older ones do. Whether the next generation appreciates it now, I don't know. But,
but the fact that there's an older generation that to a certain degree has a nostalgic, positive view of communism, given the massive socioeconomic growth in the last 30 years in Poland. How do those people, with sincerity and authenticity, believe that? Because it strikes me as they are insane.
Well, I think they are insane, but I don't know. But you're nostalgic for your childhood, when you were a kid, when you were a teenager, the music you heard, the parties you had, even though, it's nothing impressive to somebody from the outside, but for them, it's those emotional memories, and they think everything was so better then. We got to stand in line and talk to each other. And there is a truth to that. When they were standing in line on a Saturday morning waiting to buy bread for an hour, that was when they had social interaction with the other people standing in line, and they did it every Saturday. And so there they are. And then it goes away because everything changes, and now you can just buy bread. Mm-hmm. Now when are we going to stand in line and talk like we used to? Those were the good days,
Yeah, now everyone's on their phone and no one talks.
Right, and that's true. And I remember when nobody had a telephone, and so somebody could come and knock on your door, and you never knew when it would happen. And then you have to have cookies ready, and tea, and coffee, or whatever, and
they're still good about that. Everybody I've met is always offering me stuff. So
yeah. So there was something else I wanted to say about that. I wanted to say this, and I've made this point before to other people, that anybody living today in Poland should be pretty happy, just historically. When you look back, this is the best time in history to be alive and Polish in Poland. I mean, it's been going well now since at least 90, I would say. It's just been getting better. And, if you were born in the 90s, you're living a good life here in Poland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. So, not to mention the opportunities to travel now with the European Union. You can go anywhere. A lot of people 10 or so years ago went to England, especially, but also Germany, France, and other countries. Ireland was a big one. And then you meet people, you learn the language, you work and make money, and that was the main thing. So yeah. Okay. I want to ask one more. I'll go back to coffee for a second, and that's what's the best coffee you've ever had? Because I got a couple answers. What's the best place?
Theoretically, the best coffee I had was a sawmill on it's in Santa Monica. The coffee that comes out of the butt of the animal.
The monkey?
Yeah, that's civet. No, it's a civet. It's not a monkey. I think it's in Indonesia. I can't remember the animal's name, and it poops it out, and then they make coffee out of it. And I think I was with Sean Bishop and somebody else, and it's $100 for an espresso shot. And it was good, but you have to roll with that because nobody believes we had coffee out of civets behind.
And you paid $100 for that?
Yeah, for one espresso shot. I think it might be 50, but I think it was 100 because maybe I bought. It was me and Sean Bishop. I'm not, but I couldn't believe it. It was good. After that, rated by other people, probably is Blue Mountain Jamaican coffee is really good.
But how stupid would you look if you paid $100 for a shot of coffee and then you didn't like it?
I know, exactly. I told myself
this is my theory on why everybody loves a rock concert. You go to the concert and you're like, oh, it was great. Yeah, because you paid $100 for the ticket. I don't know how much a ticket is
nowadays. I'll get my money's worth. I'll be happy no matter what.
Yeah. So. Right. Oh, I was thinking of Café du Monde. I
love Café du Monde.
That's the best coffee I've ever had.
Very distinctive.
It's way up there. I think they got a little chicory in that.
They do.
And what I learned is you have to order twice. You got to get two right away because the lady will never come back.
Yeah, they're very good.
Yeah. So, and then there was a place in Dębica, the Herbacharnia, where they used to serve great coffee. I think it was coffee po turecku, like Turkish coffee, if I remember. But it was done in a special way and really good. That was good. All right. I want to talk about Cuba. So, because you're Cuban, and so what's going on now? Is it Raul? Is that the name of the brother of?
Right, it is Fidel Castro's brother. But Raul Castro's technically stepped aside. He's still the man behind the curtain.
Okay.
He's got to be pretty debilitated by now, but. They're hanging. They skipped a generation. When Fidel died, they told everyone, like my uncle, who was head of the Havana hospital, you need to train somebody in their 30s, even though you're in your 50s. You've got 2-3 years to do it. We're going to skip a generation, so when the Castros die, the Cuban Revolution will live on. So they were well prepared to skip a generation. They've got a young one that's now. That generation's in their 60s, so they're getting a little. I don't want to say too long in the tooth since I'm 61, but. The revolution, in that sense, is not in danger. The buildings, though, are so bad that buildings now collapse randomly. Cubans have now come through Mexico recently, and when they get to Miami, I have a lot of family in Miami. They complain about the work ethic. So the culture, the quality of the people's work ethic is radically different and is devolved, I would argue, from 1960 till today. But, Cuba took over Venezuela. They sent 80,000 technicians with AK-47s. Chavez was dead for 6 months, maybe 8 months, and the Fidels were signing his name running Venezuela while the man was a corpse in Havana, Cuba. And they get about at least maybe 60% of their oil and gas from Venezuela. They couldn't survive without Venezuela, so that's sewn to him. So long as Venezuela stays communist, Cuba will survive and limp along. And Daniel Ortega's president of Nicaragua. He was trained by Fidel Castro, the Sandinistas, in '79. His wife is now vice president. So, it's just nepotism through the roof. Daniel Ortega's president, his wife's vice president of Nicaragua. But they've got a triad of communist countries that support each other. Not well, and they're not doing well, but they're probably doing just enough. Nicaragua, China's trying to build a canal through their lake. Keeps running out of money. But the point is, they support each other. And so long as they do, I think Cuba will limp along. They also have a very good relationship with Vietnam. But the economy is absolutely horrific.
You've been there, and like,
Yeah, been there twice.
give us some of your impressions of actually being there. The people,
Well,
the food.
I could go, because my parents are both Cuban, so I could go directly to Cuba and I could interact with the people. I don't have to just stay at the tourist. And I have family, 38 Catholic, 62, 63, 64 came to the United States, not all, mostly Catholic, and then communist, 42 to 44. Stayed behind and went with the revolution. My aunt was Che Guevara's secretary. My uncle was quite high in the party. Had another uncle who was a tank commander, trained in Kiev in T-54 tanks and fought in Angola against Reagan and their troops in the 80s. So it's the people are. When I went 2000 roughly, the people were nice, but every neighborhood has a spy with the Communist Party. And then after the wall fell, the Cubans were living outside for almost 4 years, 2 years solid, where they didn't have electricity at night. There were rolling blackouts, and the poverty was through the roof. They could barely eat. But a lot of the hierarchy in the Communist Party felt like Russia crapped out on the revolution, that they can still win. They're still hanging on and believing that. My uncle believed it to the day he died, that it was, we're going to turn this thing around and the Russians will realize their mistake. And but the people, a lot of times, people don't have internet, and when we left, we went to Cienfuegos or Trinidad. You have to sign in. The government always knows where you're at. If you have any significance at all, there's a spy with you somewhere, or at least one, and that gets a little. Family members talk to you in hushed tones. They refer to Fidel Castro as El Caballo because you don't want to say his name, because if they hear that name, you can get in trouble. So they call him the horse. Mm-hmm. So you learn there's different terms of art just to speak and get along. And you realize, like North and South Korea, Miami Cubans and Cuban Cubans, their language is diverging. Mm-hmm. And it's getting to the point now, for example, North and South Korea, they can't communicate that well. And look, that's, 70 years. They've got different terms, and it's happening when these Cubans who just came under Biden went to Miami. They're like, it's a little tough. We can figure it out, but now it's getting tough to figure it out what's going on. Mm-hmm. So it's very different. But when I went, it was beautiful. The environment was not good wherever the communists were, because they're using Russian diesel engines. I mean, in those American cars are Russian diesel engines, pump out a lot of fumes. So Havana had more smog than LA or any major city. But the beaches, because they're not developed, and they don't have any fishing industry, because you have a fishing boat in Cuba, you're going to go to Miami with it. Mm-hmm. So there's tons of fish all around Cuba, but there's only state fishing boats. So there's massive resources they're not using, because anybody who had access to the water would keep going. They wouldn't stop. Mm-hmm. So the beaches are beautiful. So it's a but then they're still screaming about the revolution, which is a Miami Cuban. Although the communist Cubans and Miami Cubans get along, because we indirectly support Fidel, because when you get off the plane, I'm bringing stuff to my family. Like one of my cousins wanted a bicycle. So I bring a bicycle, they're going to ask you the price. You say, I bought it for $200. That's the tax. It's 100% tax. So you start lying like crazy. So I remember I've been told this one soldier, they have AK-47s right there. And I brought the women wanted underwear and bra, and they pulled that out of my thing, and they go, how much was this? I go, well, if it's personal use, you don't pay any tax. So for the bike, I said, I'm going to bike around. They're like, fine. With the bra and underwear, I said, I'm a transvestite. And that didn't work. The lady goes, no, we're going to charge you for that. You're going to pay. So when you get off the plane, the Miami Cubans are cursing and screaming and yelling, and you think they're going to have a literal shootout with the communist Cubans who have AK-47s. But they're just bartering, getting down the tax, because the thought of giving Fidel Castro or the Castros $1 in taxes, but Cubans end up giving like $500 million a year to their family, and the Miami Cubans, generally Republican conservatives, screaming they want to end communism, and yet indirectly they're one of the biggest supporters of it. And my family in Miami wasn't happy that I went to Cuba, because you're indirectly supporting that system. So it's complicated.
But you wanted to see your family.
You want to see your family before they die, so it's tough. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this goes to a broader question then regarding Cuba, but everything in history, and that's like, because the revolution was in '59, if I remember, and then so that's a long time ago. So if you were born, like when we were born, you'd live your whole life there pretty much, and in not great conditions. So some people would say, well, it's going to change, or it will change. Just give it time. I don't think time changes anything. I think, really, when I look at history, big changes come when men change it. You need a man to change, or a person to step in and change it. So is that what you think, or like, what do you think? Will time somehow make Cuba a better place, or does it? It takes like a George Washington, I think. If you want to have an America or something.
The problem is the likelihood of a George Washington coming out of Cuba, given its education, which is a lot of propaganda, diminishes generation by generation.
Well, the system is designed so that doesn't happen.
Right, exactly. So, Cuba's ace in the hole was Havana. There would be no Las Vegas if the Fidel Castro had taken over January 1st, 1959. That's why Vegas hit it. Mm-hmm. The mafia would have suffered a massive loss. Not only Bugsy Siegel would have died, but a lot of the mafiosos for losing money. Who's going to go to Vegas when you go to Havana, Cuba? You got to be kidding me. So if Cuba got rid of communism, it could come back. It has mining. It has, fertile land. They could get more money for the cigars, for the sugar. But the problem is Cuba's still agricultural. So its economic renaissance is anchored by the fact that it's an agricultural export country, sugarcane and tobacco by far, not even nickel, although it just underproduces it because it just can't. And the Castros have never been able to industrialize Cuba or create an infrastructure that would allow it. The one thing the Cubans do have is very high-tech doctors, which they basically sell. So they Nicaragua, even Mexico will take Cuban doctors, they pay them pretty well, and that money goes to the Fidel communist government, the Castro government, I should say, Fidel's dead. But the Cuban communist country get the revenues from the engineers, which Cuba does have, and the doctors in Venezuela, Mexico, and Nicaragua, and they help support the revolution. But it's a world that keeps barely hanging on, and the Miami Cubans are waiting for it to collapse. I don't think it will, but there will be no Cuban renaissance of any kind under that system. So
this could go on for another 100 years.
Theoretically, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. I stopped, when I was a kid, I was always told next year we'll be in Havana. Next year we'll be in Havana. When I hit about 2025, I'm like, okay, we're done. So.
I forgot to close the window, but that's okay. We'll just put up with a little noise.
All right.
Background noise. Go ahead.
So my question, I have to read a little bit here. How do young Poles today see freedom? And by freedom, I want you to break it down if you can. Mm-hmm. Politically, personally, and digitally, digital freedom, compared to their parents who lived under communism.
Mm-hmm. Well, it would be their parents a little bit, but we're getting quite beyond it now, so it would be more their grandparents.
Okay, well, grandparents.
But depending on what age we're talking about, but parents, grandparents, yeah. The parents would have been young kids during communism still, like in the 80s. Yeah. Okay, now let's go back. So how do the young people view freedom, right?
Politically, personally, and digitally compared to their grandparents from under communism.
Mm-hmm. Like, how do they view it? What's their impression of it?
Like, for example, political freedom, mm-hmm. How do the young ones, like your son, how does he view political freedom versus his grandfather?
That's a good question, because, in fact, I was talking to his grandfather, and one of the points he made was, look, if you just don't say anything, don't rock the boat, don't keep your mouth shut, everything's fine. We had it pretty good. That's a pretty almost a direct quote, at least in the feeling of it, is if you just kind of kept your nose clean, you could have a pretty good life. He was a taxi driver. He ended up buying a car at a pretty young age, so he had some money. Here in Poland, especially, it was a little bit looser than in some of the other countries. So, but his point was, his view of freedom was keep your mouth shut, and then you can do what you want. And you can get away with a lot, actually.
So in essence, he's saying stay apolitical, and you can do what you want.
Yes, but that's keeping your mouth shut, and that means no freedom of speech, you see. And he doesn't care about freedom of speech because he just wants to have a happy life and be quiet and be left alone, Mm-hmm. But if you want to say anything or have a second opinion or a different opinion, then you can get into trouble, and that's what's worth avoiding if you want to have a quiet, happy life. But then again, economically, they're all living in tiny houses. You're guaranteed a place to live, but it's a tiny block apartment. you're surrounded by neighbors in the apartments, and everybody's got an eye on you. You know, your eyes on everybody else. Their eyes are all on you, and you feel that. I think you feel that. So politically, I would say they feel a lot more free now. I would think, yeah. And it's a question whether they appreciate it. But I wanted to say this when we were talking earlier. Talking about communism, and I remember I was in the Lyceum, the high school where I was teaching in Dobiegniew. I was there for 3 years, so I don't know which year it was, but in that early part when I was in Poland, and I made some comment about communism, and one of the ladies that worked in the school said, "What's wrong with communism?" And it was the first time in my life I was confronted with that. Like, whoa, I better watch what I say. Like, some of these people don't like the big change, So yeah. Anyway, okay, the other part of that was
Personal freedoms,
personal freedoms. Well,
for example, like the ability to move physically,
well, that's opened up with, like in 81, I think it was, they had martial law. So then you couldn't even go from one town to another. You couldn't leave your house. There's a curfew at night.
Right.
You had to be, if you were moving, you had to be going to work or going to, have an excuse like, oh, I'm going to the shop or whatever. But that was just during martial law. But even then, they could take your passport, or you had to apply for a passport. If you wanted to leave, you had to explain where you were going. Or you could just travel within like the communist bloc. Like a lot of people would travel to do trade, and they would go to East Berlin or down to Yugoslavia, or even to Ukraine, I guess, or to Russia, and so they would travel, but within the bloc. And then, so now, with the European Union especially, they can just go all over the place, and you don't even need a passport within the European Union. So you just go. You can go to Paris like tomorrow. Just get on a train and you're there. Nobody asks you any questions. So the amount of freedom is tremendous, and they use it. They're appreciative, and they travel. I mean, they love it. From what I can tell when I talk to my students. So
let me qualify the other one. The
yes.
grandparents. Mm-hmm. Do the grandparents who lived under communism appreciate the digital freedom? By that I mean access to information that they have now, as opposed to the extremely limited access to information they had then.
Yes, they appreciate it. They love the internet, and they get on there. From what I can tell, the few examples that I know of, and they love having access to that information, and they can spend all day just looking at all kinds of cool stuff. Mm-hmm. But they're also still affected by, like, let's say, the television news. So they believe what they're told on the television, and so you got what we call in America mainstream media, and it gets right into their head, and they can be controlled by that.
So in your opinion, despite the ocean of data they have access to now, mm-hmm. they don't really, in general, speaking of generalities here, have critical thinking skills when it comes to news. Is that fair to say?
Well, I mean, I don't want to say people are stupid, but they are. But we're all affected by what we're told. The things
they don't question, or do they question the authority? Do they question it? Do they push the envelope? Maybe I should.
No, I mean, just like in America, no. Especially that older generation. You hear it on the news, so why would the news lie?
Right.
Okay. So
yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah. So there's that. Yeah. Was there another part to that?
No, that was it.
Did I answer it well? I don't know how I did with that. I'm not happy with my own answer.
I'm going to give it a B+.
All right. Okay, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but I'll throw it out there and see what you want to do. How's your health? Because you had an issue after COVID shots, right? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I didn't want to get the vaccine. As a professor at the University of Arkansas, and you lose your job if you don't get it, so it was forced. And I got it, and then I didn't ever get COVID till after I got the vaccine, which is somewhat ironic. I've had it twice since I've gotten the vaccine. And I got the spike protein. It led to embolisms in the lung, a lot. And I had a 3.5-hour surgery where I was basically a heartbeat or two away from death. And similar incidents with my dad as well, vaccine, spike protein, and the studies and what's coming out now is quite clear that your lifespan is going to be diminished because you have the spike protein from the vaccine. It's that simple. So, and the fact that it was essentially forced, you lose your job if you don't get it, it makes you not happy about it. Not happy.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and part of the result of that too is that I was looking forward to playing football with you while you were here, but and my team is right out there right now. What is it? They're just starting. It's 7:30 in the evening, and they're just getting started, and they're going to go till 9 o'clock. We would be out there with them, but and then they're going to have the camp all weekend, and I'm missing that. So.
Yeah, because if you have the spike protein and you suffer internal bleeding, I mean, the doctors told me people as they get older with this situation, if they just bruise themselves and don't massage the blood out, it can easily lead to an embolism of blood and stroke. And I had an operation with 3 other men, and it's overwhelmingly men get the issue, and 2 didn't make it, and then the other one had a stroke, and they thought I would, but I boxed, so I think your boxer's heart, they told me, saved me. And he survived the same surgery I did, but then he had a stroke within 2 weeks, so they told me later I had a 50-50 shot of that. So, yeah, playing football with pads on would be,
out of the question.
Well, according to my doctor, it'd be stupid and insane. That was his quote. But yeah, basically, I asked. He couldn't even believe I asked.
Oh, well, it would have been good, but yeah. But I'm glad you're at least healthy now. I mean, somewhat healthy and able to function. Okay, you got another one?
All right. My handwriting is so bad after this. Okay. If you could take one everyday idea, custom, or invention from Poland and make it go viral in America, what would it be and why? I'm saying this so hopefully you give a good answer, we make money. So hope this is where you earn your weight.
Okay. One everyday idea,
custom or innovation or invention that goes viral in America, what would it be?
Something that the Polish people do that the Americans ought to do.
Yeah, we want to make money. Okay, something where it'd be a smash success.
Well, I mean, we start with the food, but there's good
the
food in
food
America.
never catches on in America. There's one restaurant in LA, it's Warsaw.
Yeah.
It's a good restaurant, but it's kind of pricey. Polish food. And Polish pastries, I told you before, the different sausages, cheeses can compete with the German. The pastries they don't have as many good ones as, say, the French, but I've been in France, and the top 5 would compete with the top 5. The Polish pastries are underappreciated.
But that's new. That's something new. Then you're going to good restaurants where they make good.
All right.
That's a new thing.
I think the Poles get underrated on their food, but Americans don't know it, so that wouldn't work.
But anyway, America has good food. They don't need more food. That was just the first thing. I'm just thinking like it's like this is going to take some time to think about. What is?
We're on a podcast.
Okay, we got time. We got time. Yeah.
Because it also goes to Poland's future economic viability. Because right now it's basically become a solid second world country. Largely, though not completely integrated in the EU. And it kind of relates with what is their... Because right now their main asset has been cheap labor. And I think, according to your son Ziggy, so I'm holding him as my authority, but he seems to be pretty on the ball. This is the first year, or last year is the first year, where Poles of a certain age group, the young, were staying in Poland more than they were emigrating to another country to work.
Okay, I got it. I got the answer.
Okay.
And I don't know if we can make money on this, but it's let's start with this and then we'll see if we can make money. So the thing that would improve America most coming from Poland is what is a cultural thing, is that the men are men and the women are women. And the women dress...
I just lost half the audience.
Well, I'm sorry.
The market has shrunk to 50%.
Yeah, I know, but it's...
Although you'd be really powerful with the bricks. The bricks would be on our side.
Yeah.
So, well.
It's painful to hear, I know, for some people, but it's just true. I think America would be better off, and people would be happier, too. I think the Polish people are happy. Like the man does the man work, and the woman does the woman work, and you share a little bit, and you help each other, but...
Yeah, I don't think Americans are going to go with the traditional roles, so we're going to lose half the audience in America. Well, and we can't make money off the idea.
No, we can't.
So selling T-shirts.
But okay. As a moneymaker, I don't know. I got to think about it. You kind of blindsided me there.
Well, I talked to two of your clients about economics and stuff, and
well, they're smarter than me.
They are by a long shot, and they were, coal is a big thing here, and and they're still mining, and not just coal mining. It was cobalt, gold, silver, copper, right? Huge copper, and so in a lot of the real estate, I think you alluded to this in one of your things you said earlier. The real estate boom here is through the roof. The housing market, when I remember the prices. A huge house would be 20, 30 zloty when I got here in 95, and now it's $1 million.
Yeah.
Same house, $1 million zloty. It's mind-blowing. That's 30 times, It's doubling every year. It's just through the roof. Anyway, but these are not the kind of things that you can export. And I guess my question is, for Poland's economic or socioeconomic viability in the future, they've been exporting their labor, their youth.
Yeah.
Which isn't a strong suit for your own sovereignty, which Poland was always, having to deal with sovereignty since it's surrounded by enemies or potential enemies or pastime enemies. It doesn't bode well for Poland. They're not well, geographically located geopolitically. So, if you can answer this question, which you can't so far, then I think Poland would have a more chance to become a more viable, sustainable sovereign state. It has a card to play, and I feel when talking to Poles since I've been here, the overall impression I get is many of them don't like Brussels. They don't want to leave the EU. They think the EU's done them a good service with NATO and with food and some of the food regulations. They're happy with EU on that and NATO on that count. But overall, they don't like the various agendas of Brussels and view them as unnecessarily draconian without any clear economic benefit. I think the Polish view is, correct me if I'm wrong, EU, help us economically. Other than that, please shut up.
Yeah, definitely.
And I can understand why that's the case. I mean, nobody wants to give up the independence. But they don't, England is the financial center. The city of London is with Manhattan, the two financial centers of the world. It gives England a lot of play. Brussels is Brussels, Paris is Paris. Germany was the industrial center of Europe until recently, where they deindustrialized, where essentially their progressive party deindustrialized Germany. It's going to be much to their long-term detriment. But what card does Poland have to play, if any? If any, and it's not just you that's stumped. I mean, I've been looking for this and talking to it. When I talked to Peter with the copper mining, or Daniel, they didn't really have it either.
Well, they got military. Their military's pretty strong. I was one of my students, because I work in a military academy where I teach.
I actually think they're the best military in NATO, which I never thought. 50 years ago, the best military in NATO would be the Poles. I said, you've lost your mind.
Yeah, they've always been good at sappers. With the bomb squad things. Anyway, one of my students showed me a picture of a tank. He was just showing me this picture of it. Okay, good looking tank. I don't know anything about tanks, what kind of tank it was, but he knew and he wanted to show me. So I said, it'd be good if Poland could produce those, if they could start manufacturing them. But that's too big of an item to start manufacturing, I think. So this was my point.
Okay.
What you need to start producing, which would be much easier and quicker, like you could get it up and running in 6 months, is shells for the tank. Get the ammunition, because like what you told me earlier is that they're low on ammunition. And
actually they're getting them from South Korea, NATO, and Russia's getting them to a certain degree, to a disproportionate degree, from North Korea. So the Koreans are awesome at making artillery shells. And you're right, that actually would be a good idea. You should write the president or the prime minister that. I do think there is a need for that, especially the Russian-Ukraine war keeps going on. And Ukraine is definitely low on artillery shells. Russia's shooting them in artillery, I think 7-1. But I think they could get that going.
Let me make another point, a little historical point, is that, you got to remember too with the Poles, now we're doing all right. Like the Polish people are doing all right. We've got some universities, etc. But remember, during the war, all their intellectuals were killed. So imagine if you take America and you shoot all the professors, all of them. The scientists, and you're left with what? The workers, and you have no brain power. You have no brain power to start, and for the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you got to kind of get it up and build it up and get it running. But man, they were put back, a generation or two just by having their intellectuals killed. So You know that.
To be fair, though, that was by Stalin, not Hitler. Just to be clear, right? I mean,
Yes.
Obviously the Nazis killed a bunch.
Katyn.
Yeah, Katyn. I was thinking
Right.
Katyn Forest, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we were thinking of the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a fair point. Fair point.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Good. Anything else? Because I'm done.
Nope.
All right. What are we gonna do tonight?
I have no idea.
Okay. Maybe we'll take a walk or something. Okay. We welcome your comments and thanks for listening. See you next time. I'll try to get maybe another one with Emir before he goes. Maybe because he'll be here for another couple days. Goodbye.